Algebra 2, this is worksheet 25.2. I'm going to start with numbers 1 and 3. I'm going to do both of these in the same video. Both of these we're trying to write equations based on these parts, these graphs they're giving us. They're giving us these partial graphs. Now on number 1, the C tells us right off the bat that that's going to be a center. So we're thinking center, well, center, what has a center? Circles have the center, which means our equation should be coming from x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. So what we've got to find is we've got to find where that center is to plug it in for h and k, and we've got to find the radius. Now, just so we can see it, we know, and that's, look at that beautiful, perfect circle. Oh, it's amazing. This would be our radius. We'll worry about that later. Now, the center, the coordinates of the center are at +2 and -1. We're going right 2 and down 1. That gives us our h and k values instead of x and y. Now the h will go with the x, k goes with y. So for this first part, it's going to end up as x minus 2 squared. +2 goes in as -2. Plus, plugging in for the k value now, y minus -1, which actually will change to the opposite, which becomes +1 squared. So the only tough part now is getting the radius. Now if we draw straight from the center to this point, that shows us, okay, that's our radius, that's our length. But it's not, if it was just straight, left to right, up and down, we could just count spaces. But this one's at an angle, so what we have to do is look at some old geometry stuff. That's 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces down. There's my right angle, that's 3 spaces across. Now if you remember from geometry, the greatness that was geometry, Pythagorean theorem, 3 squared plus 4 squared equals x squared. This x squared would end up, if we solve for x, would be the radius length. Now if you go through all that, 3 squared is 9 plus 4 squared is 16 equals x squared. 9 plus 16 is 25 equals x squared. Now if you took the square root of that, you would get 5, which means the radius would be 5. But remember, when we plug the 5 in here, we're just going to square it again. So really 25 ends up being what we have in the equation. So that, oh yeah, that looks good. So there's our equation with the radius being squared. So we end up with x minus 2 squared plus y plus 1 squared equals 25. Now again, I'm going to do number 3 also. That's an example with the circle. When you get to numbers 2 and 3, though, see the difference in the graphs. Now you're dealing with a parabola. Now number 3 is the one I'm going to look at. We've got the F, that stands for focus. So we've got our focus point. So I'm going to write focus. And that point is at 2 and -1, like the circle had the center at 2 and -1. This ends up being our directrix. So our directrix is going through the x-axis at -2. This tells us the fact that the directrix is going up and down, and the focus is on this side, tells me that the parabola is going to open up to the right. It's going to end up being a horizontal parabola, which means that you're going to use excuse me, x minus h equals 1 over 4p y minus k squared. There's your graphical form of the parabola. Now your vertex, remember, is right directly exactly halfway between the focus and the directrix. From the focus all the way over to the directrix, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces. Half of that is 2 spaces, which lands me right directly on 0, -1. So my parabola is going to be looking like that. Now since I've got the vertex, again, that's 0, -1. So that's my vertex. The 0 would go in with the x, with the h value for the x, which means if it's x minus 0, it's just plain old 0, it's plain old x, there's no parentheses. Equals. Y becomes +1, again the opposite of this -1 plugs in here. This minus and the negative cancel, it gives us +1 squared. So now we just have to deal with 1 over 4 times p. Remember, p is that distance from the vertex to the focus point, or from the vertex to the directrix. And for each one, we're only going 2 spaces. That means that p value is going to be 2, which means it's going to become 4 times 2, which is positive 1/8. So number 3, our equation is x equals 1/8 times the quantity y plus 1 squared.